Hi, it's Sean, the Fluency Awesomizer. Here's another video where I want to take a few minutes and help you decode big words, to read big words. I'll also give you some spelling tips to carry around up here and use when you need. Now, I have 3 words I'm going to look at today. I'm about to show you the first one, and I want you to read it right out loud to whoever you're there with, along with the others. What is this word? What is this word? All right, how about this one? And the third word. 3 words are really similar, aren't they? That top word is intrepid. In the middle is interrupt. Down below is interpret. And I'm going to compare these words, the second and third, to the top word intrepid, which I have a feeling is an unfamiliar word for you. And maybe you thought it was one of the other 2. Before we compare them, though, I want you to think about my favorite fable, The Tortoise and the Hare, and that moral, slow and steady wins the race. The tortoise won the race, after all, when you thought the hare might. That sounds like great advice when you're running a race, but not all. I mean, when's the last time you ran a race? It's a life lesson, slow and steady, that you really take away from that story. And slow and steady is great advice when you're reading big words or unfamiliar words like intrepid. So if you're like the tortoise, you'll come up to a word like this and you read it slow and steady, very responsibly, and hopefully in this case say intrepid. But if you read like the hare, and so many young readers do this, you'll zip through this word because you want to get to the finish line. And that's where mistakes can be made. And that's why I'm here. Before we compare the words, which reader are you, the tortoise or the hare? Go. You can see the tortoise is not going to win this race, but is going to be a much more responsible reader. And that's what's important when you're reading. All right. So be the tortoise. And before we compare the words to intrepid, an unfamiliar word like intrepid, I want to make sure you know what it means. That means adventurous, right? So if you're an adventurous type of person, depending on the situation, you can use the word intrepid. It's kind of an extreme way of saying adventurous. Anyway, that's what it means. So let's compare intrepid to a word the hare might confuse it with, interrupt. Both words start the same. I want you to think about this word, since we're talking about the tortoise and the hare. Think of reading a big word as a running race. All the runners in a race are strong at the beginning. So you can see INT in both of these words. Everyone can see that. But as you go through a word, you start to get a little tired, like runners get tired when they go through a race, and the faster runners start to separate from the slower runners. Here's TR up top. The R is after an E down below. That's a big difference. The E is after the R up top. So you can see tre up top, ter down below. That is an R-controlled sound. Maybe you talk about that at school or know all about it already. Down below is ter compared to up top, tre. Now, we're running through this race, getting towards the end. There's rep up top and rup, pretty similar. And at the finish line is a D up top and a T at the end. 2 different letters, but you need to know that letter D at the end of a word can oftentimes make a T sound. All right, something to keep in mind. Maybe that's what's going to cause the confusion. Speaking of confusion, let's look at how these words can be confused. All right, intrepid and interrupt. There's the word intrepid. Watch what can happen if the hare comes along, tries to read intrepid. See the R, T-R-E? Watch that R. Yoink. That R reverses very easily. Young readers make that mistake all the time, right? So that TRE turned into a TER. Suddenly, intrepid starting to turn into interpid. And the hare, I was just talking about the end of a race. That's when runners get really tired. Watch that PID. The hare can zip through, and that PID can turn in, that P can reverse. And now it's IPD, ipt. So that word intrepid, it now looks like interrupt. And your brain can take some of those letters and move them around like I just illustrated for you. And intrepid now starts to sound like interrupt. So that's how intrepid can become interrupt up here in the way your brain is taking some of those letters and putting them together and telling you what to say when you read it. Now, the comparison between intrepid and another word the HARE might say instead, zipping through, interpret. Intrepid and interpret. Again, you're strong in the beginning. Both words have an INT. As you go through the middle of the word, you can see up top TRP. Both words have a TRP, but there's an E after the R in intrepid. The E's before the R down below. So we've got the syllable trep versus terp down at the bottom. Go terps. And at the end, you can see PID. Down below is, I see a PET, pet, PID, and that's a big difference. Also, there's an R. There's a second R in interpret, right? And it's very easy to add an R where there isn't an R. So interpret, before we look at the confusion, interpret means to explain the meaning of something. So to make sense of that, let's say this French poodle comes along and says, bonjour, bonjour, and you're not sure what the French poodle's saying because it's speaking French. Well, you need someone to interpret that for you, to make sense of that for you. And bonjour is the French poodle's way of saying, what's up, dog? All right, and so I'm here to interpret that for you. If you don't know French, bonjour from a French poodle means, what's up, dog? Now, to the confusion between intrepid and interpret. All right, there's intrepid up top. It can turn into interp, like we were just looking at, and that pid can become prid if you add an R. And that's something I was just saying, in putting an R in where there isn't an R, that is another very common behavior. So suddenly, intrepid is starting to look like interpret, and the intrepid has now become interpret, right? By reversing an R and also adding an R. Two very common behaviors. So that's how intrepid can turn into interpret. Maybe that happened for you. All right, quick look at the syllables, or should I say syllables. Intrepid is a 3-syllable word with a stress on trep, the middle syllable. Interrupt is another 3-syllable word. The stress is on that red syllable, rupt, interrupt. And interpret is another 3-syllable word, but the stress is on ter. And you want to listen to syllables. If you're stuck on words trying to spell them, listening to the syllables is a very helpful way to get to spell accurately. Right, so there's an illustration of the syllables. All right, let's wrap up this video. Get ready to read this passage that I wrote. It's going to help you practice a little bit more with these patterns we were just reviewing. And I want you to read like it's a race. Take it slow and steady like the tortoise. I'm about to show you the passage, and I want you to hit pause to give yourself plenty of time to read it, and read it out loud to whoever you're there with. Ready? On your mark, get set, read this out loud. All right, that's going to do it for today's video. Subscribe to my YouTube channel where you can find lots more videos just like this, where I try to help young readers and reading on grade levels 2 through 6, 2nd through 6th grade reading levels. Try to help them decode big words. Mom or dad can follow me on Facebook at the Fluency Awesomizer 2. In my photos, in my stream, or my feed, I have lots of reading exercises just like these that will definitely help you awesomize your fluency. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Come back and see me here at the Fluency Awesomizer really soon, all right? Bye.